Hi guys, it's April. I'm not sure why it took me this long to do a review over this book, but I want to talk about Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. As always, I am going to do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews, and that is with the non-spoiler section up front, followed by a word dump of probably spoiled-filled thoughts after that, and I will let you know when that happens in case you don't want to put spoilers into your life, but I will not judge you if you choose to spoil yourself because sometimes life happens. As you can tell, this copy of Daughter of the Forest is very, very much loved. I have tabbed the sucker out of this thing and I have reread it I don't know how many times, but to this day it remains one of my favorite reads. I randomly found it at a grocery store / gas station / I don't know what drugstore maybe. These are one of the things I just don't remember. One of those things where I was going somewhere and I needed something to read and my mom let me pick up this book, and then all of a sudden, how many years later, it remains on my shelf, very much loved, very much abused. This is how much I really like this story. This is a story of Sorcia, who is the youngest of 7 siblings. All of her 6 other siblings are young men, but she is much beloved by her brothers. This is a retelling of Six Swans or Wild Swans because both the Grimms and the Anderson brothers have a version of this story in their fairy tales, and we all know how much I truly enjoy my fairy tale retellings. This is a retelling of that story in which Sorcia is tasked with sewing shirts for her brothers who have been turned into swans. Throughout this task, she has to remain quiet lest the spell not work. In this retelling follows the storyline pretty closely, but it is so much more than that. It is set in ancient Ireland and it has all the folklore that goes along with that. You also get to see the tension between the Brits and the Irish and how all of that starts to play out within history. And Sorcia as a main character is so amazing. She is strong from the very beginning. You can tell she was raised by a family who very much valued her. They raised her to be a strong woman, but at the same time they always wanted to protect her. I love that dynamic between Sorcia and her brothers, and throughout this journey she ends up growing and becoming this amazing young woman. There's so much strength, and I love seeing all of the Irish folklore pulled into it because it plays a very strong part in everything that goes on with Sorcia. You get to see a lot of the Fae and the Fae life and how it starts to intermingle with this family, because I don't know if I said this is the first book in the Seven Waters series. So that means that there is more to this after this book, but this is by far my favorite of the series, and it can technically be read as a standalone. You don't have to go on to the rest of it because it starts to take place with later generations. But I think overall I attached myself to the story just because Sorcia is such an interesting character, and Juliet Marillier has this way of writing that really captures you and tells this really magical tale at the same time. She's so in depth with her characters, and she's so in depth with the culture and the heritage and all of that backstory that you feel very much sucked into the story. She is one of my favorite authors. A lot of times I start comparing her writing to other books I am reading. That tells you anything right there. So if you like fairy tale retellings, and if you like strong female leads, and if you just like historical fiction, this book right here is amazing. Okay, so this is the point in which I say if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend that you do, and of course come back so we can start a conversation, because I am about to say some things that may spoil you for the experience of reading this book for the first time. So go and come back. The first thing that always comes to mind when I think about this book is there is one scene in the story that will forever stick with me, and that is when Sorcia is living out in the woods by herself and she is discovered by some of the village boys, and she is brutally raped and her beloved dog is killed at the same time. This part in the book has always been so earth-shattering and painful for me to read. A lot of times when I do a reread of this story, I skip over it a little bit. There's something within the death of her companion and where she finds herself alone and unable to actually articulate what she is feeling and what she is going through when her brothers eventually find her. There's something so heartbreaking in all of that, and the strength and resilience she has to continue on even after that. I find hope in that. And it is one of those scenes that always sticks with me, and I pretty much break down every time I get to that point in the story. And I have talked to other people about this, that this is the one point in the book that really, really gets them. And I think Marillier handles it very, very well. And so that is pretty much the iconic scene in this book for me. But I have to also say that the romance in this story between Red and Sorsha, this is what I idolize. Red as a character is amazing. He is so strong, but he's so gentle at the same time. He has this quietness about him that isn't idolized in a lot of books, especially in the male lead. I love the way all of it develops, because if you're not paying attention, you don't see all of it start to come about. You don't see that relationship forming. That is one of the biggest things I love about the story, is that romance there. I love it. I love it so much. So tell me down below if you have read this book, what's your favorite part, what's your worst part, how you feel about all of this, and if you've continued on in the Seven Water series. And with that, I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.